Kevin Bieksa had a 13-year career in the NHL, an impact player who nearly won the Stanley Cup and was never afraid to show his personality, highlighted by a wry sense of humor that made him the perfect after-hours guest. We are pleased to have Kevin Bieksa with us today on this edition of After Hours. Kevin Bieksa is in cottage country in Ontario. Louis DeBrusk remains at home in Edmonton, and Kevin should be the first to admit that his multiple appearances on After Hours have helped make him a fan favorite and ultimately earned him a lot of money. Are you prepared to confirm that, Kevin?
Yeah, you basically made my whole career, so I appreciate it.
Good. That's what I call a perfect start to this show. Look, we have some exclusive video that explains to us what you've been doing during the pandemic.
Oh, here we go.
Wow, you can really dance. Wow, you can really dance. He went. They said we've both been dancing all this time. What a coincidence.
On the contrary, that is beautiful. That's you with your daughter, Reese. But how long have you been taking dancing lessons?
Oh, my whole life. I started ballet young. Well, if you could, to my defense, you could see I'm in my workout clothes. I just finished the workout and I come inside, and this was at the beginning of the quarantine. And my daughter says, "We're going to do a TikTok dance." And I don't know what your household's like, but my daughter runs the house, and what she says goes. So I did it, and I've done several other ones since, and it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, there's a bunch of those on your Twitter account, and they are all great. All right, Louis is going to get the show back on track here.
I think it's awesome, Kevin. I've got a 22-year-old daughter that is continually trying to get me to do a TikTok dance, but I can't dance as well as you, so I won't do that.
Yeah.
But let's talk hockey for a second. You're not too far gone from the game. You talk to a lot of players. What are you hearing about the NHL's return to play, and what's your opinion of it as the process goes along?
Yeah, I mean, I know there's a lot of different opinions out there, and I think the players that I've talked to are split. You know, there's a lot of players that are concerned whether or not, first of all, the safety protocols are going to be enough to protect them and to protect their families. And they're worried about, most likely they'll be bubbled and quarantined and they'll be away from their families for months at a time, right? They're worried about whether it's going to be basically worth it or not to finish this season. And that's also being balanced with the feelings of wanting to play hockey again and wanting to get back on the ice, give the fans a product. I think hockey players, more than any, and I'm biased, we're all biased, but I think hockey players more than any other sport care about the game and they care about the fans as much as any other athlete. So I think that's balance. It's a balancing act, right? It's whether or not it's going to be the right thing to do is come back and play, and balancing that with the responsibility of giving the fans some sort of entertainment in a really tough time right now in the world.
So, Kevin, none of us are epidemiologists here, but clearly the NHL is going to try to sell this plan based on the players being as safe in the bubble that the NHL creates as they would be if they stayed at home. But someone could be in that bubble for as long as 10 weeks. Hypothetically, for you, as an older player, if you were still playing, husband and father to 2 young children, how would you be reacting to that possibility?
Yeah, you would be worried about that. You'd be worried about not being able to see what happens if one of your kids gets sick while you're in your bubble? You leave the bubble and you're done, right? You basically can't come back, or if you do, you have to quarantine. There's a lot of worry, a lot of concerns. I think that's why you're seeing it take so long. And even in other sports, you see how they wanted to reopen some of the facilities for training, and then in Tampa Bay, a whole bunch of people has contracted the disease. It's a tough time, and it's not an easy decision what to do. And moving forward, it's unprecedented. It's uncharted waters. I don't envy the people making the decisions right now.
Where do you think it sits with the players right now? 50-50?
Yeah, I would say so. I would think, as much as you would think that all the players are informed on what's going on, I think there's still a lot of players that are being caught off guard with some of these announcements, like moving into phase 2, moving into phase 3. I'm not positive everybody's on the same page yet. I'm not sure all the players are informed of the next stages.
All right, this is the first chance we've had to speak to you since Sedin night at Rogers Arena in Vancouver in February, when you brought the house down with your tribute speech. Let's have a look and a listen part of it.
But you know how we'd all come to our first training camp in really good shape? Well, Hank never got that memo. He brought an extra 15 pounds with him instead, but he lost it. And then there's Danny. He's got a legitimate candy addiction. He eats half of his body weight in sour keys and Swedish berries every Saturday, but that's not important. That's not relevant.
Kevin, you stepped up to that microphone and just started talking like you were the most comfortable guy in the whole room. That's not an easy thing to do. How much of that speech was rehearsed and how much of it was just off the hip?
No, most of it was prepared, and I took like a couple days before. I knew I wanted to go up there, and I didn't want to read from a piece of paper, and I knew I wanted to be myself and not just be some formal speechwriter. So, I kind of thought of, I actually bounced a lot of ideas off my wife and all the stories I have with the Twins over the years. I'm like, okay, what stories can I actually share with these people, that are appropriate and the Twins won't be embarrassed. And she kind of helped me, deflect some of the stories that were inappropriate and say, maybe concentrate on these. But I certainly kind of went through how I wanted the speech to kind of progress. And it turned out well. Like those are all true story or facts for the most part. There's a couple things I embellished just for entertainment, but Danny's has a big candy fetish. His whole family does. Hank used to be really fat when he first came into the league. It was hilarious because if you see the pictures, they got the big swollen faces, and they worked their way to being in top condition, players on the team. But the funny thing about that speech is when we all walked onto the ice, you can't really, because of the acoustics of the arena, you can't really hear what the person at the mic is saying. So John Shorthouse is the MC, and he's speaking, and he calls me up, and I didn't even know what order I was in or anything, and I didn't even hear him call me because you can't hear. And the majority of the speech when I was talking, the Twins couldn't hear exactly what I was saying. They could kind of read my lips by looking at the monitor right in front of them, but it was tough to interact with them because they couldn't hear what I was saying. So I think they went back and they watched it after and laughed.
That's amazing. What are your thoughts on the Canucks announcing the Daniel and Henrik Sedin Award for humanitarian contributions and who best exemplifies outstanding community leadership qualities? I mean, that is right up their alley. They were ambassadors for the 17 years. They wore the uniform, and they still are now. What a fitting award to go to them.
Yeah, it is a fitting award. It's nice, for them to be honored in that way. When we all first came to the team, and they were a couple years before me, there was a really good alumni in place before that. And the guys like Harold Schneps and Kirk McLean and Trevor's there now. And there's a lot of guys, I can name them all, Kearns, Rhoda, all those guys, Courtnall. They set kind of the standard for us, and Nazi and Bertuzzi and Jovo and Olin, those were the older guys at the time. And it was, it was mandatory, but it was encouraged to do your part in the community and to make the community yours and to give back whenever you can. And the Twins just took that to the next level. We all did it to some degree, and we all had our different passions. I kind of went the mental health way with Rippin'. And everybody kind of did their own thing, but the Twins kind of took it to the next level with how much they gave back. And the children's hospital visits, on top of the ones that we did as a team, they donated so much money, and they always did it anonymously. And then they had to be convinced afterwards to make it public because they thought it would get more donors. So they always did it for the right reasons, which was the awesome thing. They didn't do it for the attention or the notoriety. And, they were the leaders in that regard for sure.
Yeah, Daniel and Henrik set a standard that Canuck players, as time goes on, may never be able to live up to, and maybe that's a good thing. A couple of questions, Kevin, about the 2010-11 Canucks, the team that came within a game of winning the Stanley Cup. Best team you ever played on?
Yeah, I think so. From start to finish, for sure. I think my second year with the Ducks, when we lost in the conference finals to Nashville, was also a really strong, really deep team, and kind of one of those teams where when we lost, it felt like it was one of those chances that slipped by. But the 2010-11, from start to finish, we had a lot of guys come in that summer, but a bit of an overhaul. We had Manny Malhotra, Rafi Torres, Keith Ballard, Hamuse. We had 4 pretty big free agents come in that year. And I remember the training camp up in Vernon, BC, and we golfed. I golfed with them every day during camp and really got to know them. And we gelled so well as a group, and I think that's why we had so much success throughout the season.
So 2010-11, you were 6 years into your 13-year career, and you couldn't have known then that was going to be as close as you'd ever get to winning the Stanley Cup. Now, 2 years into retirement, how do you look back on that run?
The ending sucks, for sure, but I always said it's not so much getting to the top of the mountain as it is the journey there. And I enjoyed the journey there. It was a great year. It was so much fun. We had an unbelievable playoff run where the city and the fans really got behind us, and it turned Vancouver into, the best place in the world at the time to be. If you see all the people on the streets and the restaurants and the bars, and everyone's partying, everybody was having a great time. We had so much support, and we came within one game. Right, we came within one game of winning it all. Yeah, that would have been the cherry on top, but really the enjoyable thing was the whole ride from the start of the season to the end. We won the President's Trophy that year. We had a lot of individual accomplishments. The whole year was awesome. We just didn't get that cherry at the end.
Louis.
Kevin, every time we talk, we inevitably will come to the topic of the Superman punch. We love that Superman punch, and we talk about it all the time. But in this case, we're going to talk about an entirely different punch, and that's punching the ticket to the Stanley Cup final in that 2010-11 run. And it was you that scored that overtime winner. Number one, did you follow the puck the whole way before you shot it? Because it seemed like everybody else on the ice had no idea where that puck was. And there's a rumor that your son, Cole, although he was young at that time, he followed it the whole way.
Yeah, that was a nice segue that you did there. I like how you spun that one. You're getting good. You're getting too good. The goal, from what I remember, I just remember being exhausted by that point. We're in double overtime. And yeah, Edler and I were on the opposite sides. We got flip-flops somehow. And usually I would be on the right, he'd be on the left, but we were flip-flops. So I remember just standing in the middle of the ice. Basically, you know what it's like as a D-man. You're just catching your breath in the offensive zone, right? Just hanging out, just watching everything. And I remember the puck came to him, and I'm thinking, okay, I got to back out of the zone just in case he flubs it or whatever. And then he dumps it in, and it hit the partition, the stanchion, or whatever you want to call it, and it bounced there. And we, especially Edler and I, it's funny I brought him up. We practiced so much shooting, one-timing, bouncing pucks in practice. Whenever you get sometimes you get a crappy pass in practice, and you kind of stare the guy down, like, what the hell was that garbage? Well, we would take pride in trying to one-time those kind of passes. So I was kind of decent at one-timing knuckle pucks and bouncing pucks, and came in pretty handy that time. So it was a great goal. And I remember my son took the credit that he saw the goal the whole way, and he knew that I scored, and he was watching at home with our nanny at the time. We had a live-in nanny back then who was awesome. And they were watching it together, and he was claimed to be the first one to spot it.
Well, Cole, he was only about 4 then, wasn't he?
Yeah, it was 2011. He would have been 4, exactly.
Yeah. All right, let's get to the Kess and Juice podcast. You and former teammate Ryan Kesler, I think, did 14 episodes before you put it on hiatus about a month ago. How do you think it went?
It went well. It was one of those things where we wanted to start out and see how it went, and if we liked it, and if there was a demographic for it. We got a lot of good feedback. We pushed out a bunch of episodes. We had fun doing it. And then the pandemic started, and we had some other stuff kind of get in the way. So we took a little bit of a hiatus, and, who knows if Kess and I are going to continue to do a couple little projects together. We got one coming out on Saturday night that we're going to watch a classic NHL classic game and basically sit around and shoot the breeze, and people will be able to watch that. But yeah, we have a chemistry for sure. Sometimes it's hostile, and I think the people know that. He comes at me, I go at him. We've been together a long time. We've been through everything together, so it's a good dynamic.
So Kesler was nervous when you started it. His quote was something to the effect of, well, people get you, Kevin, but I don't think they get me. So here was Ryan Kesler in episode 14 of the Kess and Juice podcast.
Well, obviously, I had a minor procedure too, so we're not going to talk about that though. Oh yeah, don't you know there, eh?
Here we go. Here we go with that terrible accent again.
Oh, okay, Juice.
So let's
in Muskoka having a Tim Hose double there, eh?
That's not even a Canadian accent. What is that?
Oh, it's one of those Canadian accents there, eh?
It's like a Newfoundland, French, Livonia
maple
accent.
Glazed donut, double, nothing better.
Love a maple glazed donut right now.
Better than a moose's ass there.
Stretch run of the playoffs coming up, Cass.
It sounded like an episode of Wayne's World from Saturday Night Live, or Strange Brew with Bob and Doug McKenzie. Yeah. Do you think people get Kesler now?
They're starting to. You certainly don't get any smarter from listening to our podcast. But I think I told him at the beginning, I said, hey, Kes, the way this is going to work is if we're ourselves. Like, you're a prick. So be a prick. Don't try to be the nice. So the first couple episodes, he's trying to be the nice, politically correct guy. And don't get me wrong, he's a nice guy at times. I'm sure to his family he's a nice guy. But the reason we all love him is because he's a miserable prick. So I wanted him to stay true to himself, but he's starting to express himself very well. He's pretty witty, actually, and he's pretty funny. It comes, once in a while, but when he throws out a zinger, it's pretty good usually.
All right, we have a picture here that comes with a warning, and that warning is if you're queasy, turn away. We'll see it here in a second. What is it, Kevin?
Oh, yeah. I remember that pic. That's his fake hip.
Yeah.
I guess he tweeted that. I saw that when it first happened last year. And I look at the reflection of it. You can see in the reflection kind of the doctors.
Yeah.
Yes.
But no, I mean, his pain is real. And he pushed his body. And he struggled with hip pain for a long time. And he had a couple surgeries. I think that was his third surgery. And now he's got a full hip replacement. And he's pain-free in that hip. But now the other hip is starting to get sore because it's been compensating. I mean, it's just a lifelong struggle for a lot of hockey players with injury. And every hockey player's had hip pain, but his is next level, obviously.
Obviously, he's not thinking about playing again, is he, after having that type of a surgery?
Well, remember what I said, how we weren't the smartest podcast out there? I think he's
in the back of his mind.
He's a competitive. You know what? Really, in the back of my mind, I've trained every day since I stopped playing. In the back of my mind, I'm like, who knows? One day I might wake up and want to play again too. Like, that's how stupid we are as players. My body feels pretty good now. Like, I'm lucky I got through my career and all my injuries, and I feel pretty good. But you still think you probably think you're going to play again maybe in a couple of years.
Long gone for me.
Sixth defenseman on the Bruins when they win the cup, right?
I would like
play
that
with your
role.
son.
I would take that.
In the back of all of our minds, there's always that little chance, and I'm sure he's thinking in the back of his head, but he's a long way away from that.
Kevin, I want to talk a little bit about Rick Bowness. You have said in the past that he was your favorite coach through all the coaches you had in the National Hockey League. I had Bowens as a coach as well in Phoenix in my time there. Just an amazing human being. But what was it about Bowens that made him your favorite coach?
What I loved about Bowens, and I don't get sick of talking about him because now I'm coaching and I have a hockey academy in California, and I'm interacting with players, and I really try to model the way Bowens treated me and the rest of the guys and direct it towards these kids. I don't know how. I know how he did it, but you just knew that he cared. You knew he cared about you. You knew he wanted you to do well, whether you're the sixth defenseman, the first defenseman, the seventh or eighth defenseman not playing. And he had a relationship with every guy individually. You knew he had a passion for the game. He wasn't always kind, and he wasn't always, cushy and, blowing smoke. He gave you the hard, cold truth, and he never played mind games, and he always let you know where you stood. And when you had success, you knew he was genuinely happy for you. And we had a lot of success together. He was he wasn't my first defense coach in the NHL, but he was the one I had for 7 years and taught me more than any other coach I've ever had in my career at any step of the way. So I'm glad he's the head coach again in Dallas. I've still kept in contact with him and his family. And he's, like you said, not everyone's going to love every coach. And I'm sure there's some people out there that didn't like Bones when he was the head coach in Boston or Ottawa back in the day, but by far and away my favorite coach ever.
Kevin, the pandemic aside, which isn't easy to say because we don't know when or how it's going to end, what it will look like when it does. You've just turned 39. You could have a full-time career as a hockey broadcaster if you wanted to do that. You've chosen so far not to do it, at least not full-time. So what does the future hold for you?
Well, it's funny. I've had that conversation with a few people, and I've had a few people reach out in hockey operations and some different teams and ask me which way I want to go. And the reason why I kind of got into media last year was I just mentioned it. I started the first hockey academy in Southern California, West Coast Academy. My son's in it. I spent every day at the rink on the ice with him and the group. That was important to me to kind of still be around the game and give back and also be around my family. So media allowed me the flexibility to do that. to do both basically. To get involved with an NHL team would take a lot more of a commitment. So that's something I'm a little bit more hesitant unless it's the absolute perfect fit. So I enjoy the media. I enjoy flying to Toronto and going in the studio there and being on the panel with Elliot, Elliot and I don't know if you guys are knowing, we're having a competition right now. Who can grow an uglier beard? And he's winning. He's hands down the winner right now. But Kelly and Berkey and all those guys, I enjoy. David Amber, I enjoy working with them. It's a nice team atmosphere. So it's kind of filling the void for retirement because I'm still on the ice with the kids, and then I'm still have the camaraderie of working with those guys and talking hockey and being around the game. So the future, I don't know exactly what it holds. I don't know if I'm going to be moving back to Canada anytime soon, but my options are open, and I'm enjoying every day, and I'm trying a lot of different things.
Okay then, Kevin, continuing with that thought, as you dabble in broadcasting, you've done your best to finish my career. And I think back to All-Star in San Jose in 2019 when you gave me a couple of bad scoops. Number one, you said Ryan O'Reilly played the banjo. So we went out and got a banjo, and it turned out he couldn't play a note. And then you thought it would be funny if you got me to show Matt Barzal, you blowing him up in his rookie season. And the poor kid was so furious at me that I don't think he'd speak to me to this day. Do you regret either of those bad scoops?
Well, hold on. That's propaganda on your end. First of all, the O'Reilly scoop was good. It was accurate. He was just too embarrassed to admit it because we talked to him again this year, and he said, yeah, like I do. I was taking banjo lessons. I have one. That was on him. That was a good scoop. It was confirmed. And the Barzal thing, it was just so out of context. He didn't even know I was there on the bench. And then you're showing him, like, think of it if you're him. You're a kid that goes to the All-Star game for the first time. You had a great year. And the first interview you do on Hockey Night on Canada, you got Scott Oakes showing you a video of you getting destroyed from a body check from some guy who you're like, why are you even showing this? So it was a little out of context.
That was your idea.
Yeah, but it was my idea for me to show him the hit, not you. Like, why would you show him that hit? He's thinking, why the hell are you showing me getting blown up by Bieksa? Like, he didn't know I was at the game. Anyways, I'm not taking full blame for that. I'll take 50% of the blame for that. But that's a little bit on you. Like, haven't you won some Emmys or something like that before? You got to know this kind of thing.
That's like throwing a pass right in the skates, Okie. You got to learn to pick those up.
Final question comes from Louis.
Kevin, what do you think of the worldwide reaction to the death of George Floyd and how it's changing the world?
Yeah, it's just such a sad thing. And you know what? I'm glad you asked that, Louis, because I haven't made any comment on social media or any post about it. I know a lot of hockey players have and a lot of people in general, because it's kind of one of those times where you don't know exactly what to say, right? There's nothing I can say that's going to make it better. It's one of those cases where I really believe, being a white male, I have to really sit back and keep my ears open, keep my eyes open, learn, listen to people, listen to the hardships that people are going through, the black community, and try to be a part of the change. So from my perspective, I'm sitting back, I'm watching. It was a devastating thing that happened. My first reaction, I feel like I saw the video before it went public, because I saw the video and I remember thinking, oh my God, this is terrible. Like, in me, as soon as I saw that, it makes you want to, grab that police officer and beat the crap out of him. Like, you just think it's a ridiculous thing that he was doing. Like, for 9 minutes, was it? 9 minutes. You just want to punch the screen on your phone when you're watching it. And obviously there was big time backlash. The good thing that come out of this is it's galvanized the black community, and it's galvanized, I think, the entire United States, to the point where everybody demands change. Everybody demands justice. And I think we're moving in the right direction. It's going to take some time, but I think it's really opened up everyone's eyes. And then you have the protests and everything. Like, I live in Newport Beach for the majority of the year, and there was a lot of protests in Huntington Beach. And there's different reactions on that. And my wife's actually told me, like, don't speak on this because you have to sit back and listen and watch. But the protests, unfortunately, they've gotten violent at times, and sometimes that's what's needed. And I'm not condoning it, and I'm glad it's over for the most part. But the world really had to open its eyes to what was going on and the way black people are treated. I listen to some people speak, and how, somebody the same age as me, a man, goes for a jog and he can't wear a hoodie Because if he's wearing a hoodie running through the streets, you know, right away he's a suspect if a police car drives by. Like, I've never had to worry about things like that. You know what I mean? Like, white privilege does exist, and it's glad that we're all recognizing it. And there will be change to come out of this. It's galvanized the country. I know that's a long-winded answer, but it's a different time right now, and I'm glad everyone's being supportive of it.
So I think you nailed it in part of that answer when you said, Kevin, that we would all be well advised to do a lot more listening and less talking. And let's finish with the question that we posed in each of our last 3 episodes of After Hours. Are you then hopeful that what we're seeing now is the beginning of the end of systemic racism?
Yeah, it's the beginning for sure. We can't be naive and thinking this is going to change overnight, right? There's still, and you see at the protests, there's still a lot of those white supremacists that make their way out, and those people that are going to fight this because that's what's ingrained in them. That's the way they were raised. You have to wait till it outgrows all these people and all these generations before us that was the way they were raised, and that's what they really believe to the core. So the more people, you know, that can push those guys aside and not let them have a voice, the better, right? The majority of people now, we all grew up, I grew up, and there's been a lot more equality since I've grown up, right? And that's the way I've been raised. I've been raised with equal rights for women, equal rights for black, like that's the way I've been raised. But there's still the generations before me that it's going to take a long time, and you may never convince those people in those generations. So you need the younger generations now to step up and take more of a leadership role.
Okay, that's where we will leave it. Kevin, thanks for joining us again on After Hours. I believe this was your 67th appearance, thereabouts.
Oh, at least. It feels more too. Every time I talk to you, it feels like we've been on for 10 episodes.
Yeah, and every time you come on, you can't believe the show still exists. Kevin Bieksa was our guest on our final online edition of After Hours. We're going to take a break for a while now in anticipation of hockey starting up at some point this summer. So thanks for watching After Hours Online. Thank you again, Kevin.
I actually had a lot of fun, guys. Thank you.
Thanks, Kevin.